Hello again, everybody. Max here, as usual. Today we dive into this wonderful world of extraterrestrials and their interactions with us. This is chapter 11.2, called Military Implications, where we get further into this mystery and this wonderful world of alien spacecraft and whatnot. Before we do that, usual housekeeping here. The Amazon page where you can find the book and all the hyperlinks to all the information and documentaries and video clips. So please go there and support me. Also find me on YouTube, as usual, on Rumble, and on Brighteon. Please like and share. Now, we have discussed in the previous part how all of this is absolutely real and possible, and its implication for us on the surface is enormous. I have also been very clear regarding my own experience, which is something I do not share usually, but in this case I find it essential in order to gain credibility for what I am describing to you. As I said, if what I saw was real, anything is possible from that moment on. We saw what Dr. Greer described as black budget operations, above and beyond any checks and balances. Let's now look at what that has produced over time. This is all highly classified and secretive, as we know. But there are always trails left behind and strings we can pull and unravel. I have in my studies come across an enormous amount of evidence. As a matter of fact, the amount of evidence available is so large, it's not even funny. Most of it is based on testimonials. Could they be fake? Of course. But I will describe some of them to you, and you judge for yourself what you consider to be credible or not. In the end, it's all up to you. I do, however, wish to emphasize one very important point before I proceed here. Much of what I describe here is related to programs and technology that is space-related, in one form or another. There will be mention of vessels that supposedly took mankind around the galaxy and back. This whole argument would completely conflict with my own large Earth theory that we spoke about before, and it would contrast with everything I have explained so far and invalidate my theory completely. So I need to make you aware of one important point that I will dig into a little bit deeper here, so there are no conflicts. We mentioned before about the waters above, as described in the scriptures, and all the ancestors were supposedly aware about. We have currently no way to travel there and confirm it on our own, so we need to use some logic. Now, who is to say that the waters above is what we are being told is space? That the Moon, Mars, and the other planets are just domed realms spread across the surface? What would the space between those domes look like? Could it be a vacuum? Maybe. Could it be water? Maybe. Now observe these little shots I took out from the Nos Confunden map, the Terra Infinita map that I showed you in a previous chapter. What I describe as space could indeed be the space between these domes, or these realms, so to speak. What could the space between them actually be? We don't know, as this information is not available at the time. What we do know is the following, and I will make a really good point here. The clowns at NASA have the largest pool ever made, with a replica of the ISS, the International Space Station, submerged inside. You can see it on your screen right here. This is where most of the spacewalks take place, and it has been proven. And it is a talking point that will not go away. They talk about bubbles in space. Many researchers have confronted astronauts in the past, asking them about these obvious bubbles that keep appearing on their videos during their spacewalks, and they never know how to reply. It's absolutely hilarious. Because of course, they can't tell the public that all those videos are actually filmed underwater, hence the bubbles. So now that you've seen this pool here, maybe you start to understand what an absolute fraud all of this is. I will also play you a little clip here of an intelligent young man who makes some very solid points. And about halfway through his video, he talks about this pool that I'm describing to you. So please listen to what he says, and the pool part comes in the end of this little clip. So please enjoy.
So can someone help me and do me a favor? Can you tell me why the moon is super reflective and super bright in our night sky, but the moon doesn't look reflective at all on any of the moon landings? In fact, it just looks like dirt, and his spacesuit looks even more reflective than the moon itself. So if the moon is reflecting the sun's light, and it's being shown all the way here, to where our eyes can see it, how is this possible that it's not reflective at all when we actually land on the moon? And I know we didn't land on the dark side. So Mars has a CO2 atmosphere of basically nothing. It's a little bit of CO2. And this means that since it has no atmosphere, something wouldn't be able to land on it. There is no wind if there is no atmosphere. Because the atmosphere, it's particles. It's actual physical particles. So an airplane is pushing off of physical particles in the atmosphere in order to create thrust. So this means that if you mimic the atmosphere of Mars and you put a fan to a feather, guess what happens? The feather doesn't move because there is no particles for the feather to push off of. This means that all these little flying drones on Mars couldn't possibly fly around. This is impossible. Of course, I'm making this up. I'm being sarcastic. Of course we went to the moon. And of course the Earth is a globe. I just like making this stuff for fun. So we've all heard of the Red Bull space jump where this dude jumps from over 120,000 feet above sea level. And from that height, you should see some curvature, right? Curvature, not convexing. Why is the globe convexing? Does that make any sense to you whatsoever? If we live on a globe, how can it simultaneously be doing the absolute opposite? Of course, I know for a fact we live on a globe, but I also do know that this is a fisheye lens, a wide-angle fisheye lens. So if you hold it upside down, it's going to do that. But if you hold it straight up, it's going to do that. Am I saying that they're faking curvature with a wide-angle fisheye lens? Of course not. And this entire video is just for laughs. But it is pretty interesting how this globe looks on this video, isn't it? I mean, he actually did the jump. He actually went that high and did the jump. But why is he having to mess with the visuals of this video being presented to us? You have to ask yourself those questions. So yeah, I mean, it does it multiple times throughout this video to where the Earth looks both convex and curved. Oh, so now we live on a donut Earth. It's literally a giant donut? What is going on? I don't understand how this could be possible if we live on a globe. Something's going on, something's fishy, they're hiding something from us. But this was just a Red Bull space jump, and it was for laughs and giggles, and he just did it for entertainment purposes. Just like this video. I have no idea what I'm talking about, and I have zero eligibility to anything that I say. However, I do know that that is a fisheye lens. Just kidding. Just stop right here and think for a second. I want you to take a good look at this video and ask yourself, why is this happening? What is going on? Why would an astronaut be training underwater? And why would an astronaut suit look exactly like a spacesuit? And why would the movements going on simulate the environment of them being in space if they're underwater? The vacuum of space is, well, an empty vacuum of space. So isn't that just a little bit fishy? Now this guy's really important. He's saving the world, and he's telling us exactly how he's doing that by simulating the environment of being in space by putting astronauts underwater. Pretty crazy. But of course, they're actually in space, and those heroic astronauts are training to go in space by going underwater. Isn't that pretty amazing? Is that a satellite? And do you guys remember that movie called Fly Me to the Moon? Now, can you remember what that movie was about? That's pretty interesting, isn't it? Now, I wonder why Hollywood would put out a movie like that. But anyway, this is just for entertainment purposes only, and I have no idea what I'm talking about. And the International Space Station is not underwater.
So there we have it. Pretty interesting, right? Especially the mention of that movie that I would definitely suggest you all to watch because that just came out some time ago. And it tells you everything about the fake moon landing. Absolutely spectacular. Now, I could contend, emphasis on could, that there probably could be actual water out there. We have the vessels and technology to penetrate our firmament, probably by a technology that changes the frequency of the matter of the vessel, thus allowing it passage. It would be a sort of plasma bubble that surrounds the ship, allowing the vessel to travel at great speeds through any material, water, solid matter, you name it. They can do it. Very similar to the bumblebees that we mentioned on the jet fuel hoax chapter previously. Frequency and resonance nullifies gravity and mass. This will come up later on in this episode. The bumblebees just keep coming back for some reason. So said all that, let's look into this fascinating topic because the main point I'm attempting to convey is not water or vacuum. It is the fact that this technology has existed for a long time and is being used behind our backs. This is tech that could revolutionize our world in an instant. Much of my learnings comes from an incredible gentleman called Dr. Michael Salla, and many others, of course, but I will introduce him to you here because he is a very solid source for information. He is now one of the most respected scholars on exopolitics and extraterrestrial matters in general. He has written several books on the matter, which some of them I show you here, and he has lectured at large seminars. I suggest you to look him up. He has a YouTube and a Rumble channel. Now this man goes incredibly deep and has read every declassified document there is, proving without any doubt that there is a secret space force actively operating. This has absolutely nothing to do with the clowns at NASA and does not use rocketry and other dinosaur technology, as they want to make us believe. I must mention that Salla, even though all his information is very credible, might of course be a misinformation spreader, as many others. But there is truth to this, of that I'm certain, I just don't know how much. This is a highly advanced operation, and has been active since at least the 1970s. Stephen Greer also confirms this, as do many others. Now let me show you a screenshot of his Rumble channel here. There you go. So why don't you take your time and go take a look at what he has to say. He's been doing this for years and has a huge following online. Names of some testimonials and whistleblowers, in case you wish to dig deeper and listen to what they have to say, you can research Randy Kramer, Tony Rodriguez, Elena Danan, JP, Billy Meyer, Jean-Charles Monnier, French guy, Alex Collier, David Grush, Michael Jaco, Max Spears, Chris O'Connor, Mark Domizio, Andrew Basiago, Laura Eisenhower, yes, she's the granddaughter of the President Eisenhower, James Gilliland, and that's just to name a few. The stories these people have to tell are absolutely incredible. Some of them, who have not even met each other before, mentions that they were working on the same vessels. This is there's some interesting corroboration here. From what I can gather, most of them have something in common. It's a program they call 20 and Back. Most of the testimonials come from military people who has served in the secret space fleet and served for a minimum of 20 years, some longer. Some of them even claims to have done 3 tours of 20 years each, 60 years in total. This sounds absolutely insane, I know, but follow me. What happens is this. They are selected at a very early age, usually from military families, with a parent or two already working in the forces in some capacity. These kids are put under rigorous tests to establish the psychic abilities, genetics, and moral conduct. They are then enrolled, particularly in the US Navy, who is the agency that started the Space Force and runs it to this day. When their service begins, they sign a contract with all bells and whistles, with a promise that after the engagement, at the termination of duty, they will be rewarded with a comfortable pension and taken care of. After the 20 years, they all have their memories wiped, and they are aged regressed to the original age and time when they left. In order to achieve this, medbed technology is needed. So this just confirms what I've been saying in previous chapter. These people have technologies that we can't even fathom. Many say they woke up with a contract in front of them in the same room with a high-ranking officer telling them that they did not make the cut and are dismissed. In the meantime, they stole 20 years of their life. They can't remember. As they do not remember anything, no pension is provided, and they go on living their normal lives. However, some of them start to remember though, and many of them, through hypnotic regressions, meditation, and other tools, have recovered these memories almost in full. I will provide one of these interviews for you to download in the book. It's just part of the story, but quite remarkable nonetheless. A full series of interviews of a gentleman called Randy Kramer that I mentioned before can be found on Gaia TV online. They provided a polygraph test, but it's behind a paywall and copyrighted, so I cannot provide you those interviews. I can only tell you where to go. So Randy Kramer he beats all of these guys because he underwent this polygraph test to confirm that his recollection and experience were 100% accurate. A lie detector test like that, made by highly skilled professionals, is not a joke. So we have that to corroborate the story as well. So accept all these testimonies. What else do we know for a fact? Well, there was a young man called Gary McKinnon in the UK who was a decent computer hacker back in the day. He managed to hack into both the Department of Defense and NASA to search for documentation proving the existence of UFOs and zero-point energy. He found not only photos of large, humongous craft, but also found spreadsheets of off-world officers with names, deployment, and what ship they served on. I will now show you a little video here of a guy and a fish. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's his gimmick. And they talk exactly about this. It's a cute little clip, and he explains the story very well, but then he kind of dismisses the whole thing in the end. So, take it for what you will. The story is what matters here, not his conclusions. So I suggest you to watch it regardless, because he goes into great detail. And this video is a little bit long, it's about almost 30 minutes long, but please sit down, make yourself comfortable, and listen to this amazing story of Gary McKinnon. Here we go.
Gary McKinnon was obsessed with UFOs and believed governments were covering up evidence that UFOs exist. In the year 2000, he decided to do a little digging. Gary was a computer expert, so what better place to dig than on US government computers? What he found was so shocking that it sent the entire United States government into a full-blown panic. In fact, the US spent 10 years trying to prosecute Gary. He was looking at 70 years in federal prison. But what information did Gary find that could cause the US government to become so aggressive?
Please say aliens. Please say aliens.
Aliens.
Yabba dabba doo!
Gary McKinnon's stepfather was into science fiction and space travel, and this rubbed off on Gary. When he was only 12 years old, he joined BUFORA, the British UFO Research Association. But it all came together when Gary was 13 and had his own UFO sighting. He saw a bright red light in the sky that went from horizon to horizon in about 5 seconds. At first he thought it was a meteor, but it was moving too slowly and erratically. He said it moved through the sky in a waving motion like a dolphin bouncing in and out of the water.
Oh, you know what? Space dolphins move that way on purpose.
Really?
I only said that because I wanted to see him make a face like he smelled a fart.
As time went on, Gary became convinced that governments around the world, especially the United States government, had evidence that UFOs and aliens were real, but this evidence was being withheld from the population.
Of course they withhold it. And thank God they do, we'd be out of a job.
Amen to that. Well, Gary McKinnon was an expert in computers and networking and worked as a systems administrator. Even though he was good at his job, he was bored with it. His real passion was UFOs, a passion that was becoming an obsession. And if the government was hiding information about UFOs, he was going to do something about it.
Idle fins are the devil's playground. That's something I teach all my guppies.
Gary knew that both NASA and the U.S. Department of Defense use Windows, which he described as a operating system. Using skills he learned as a sysadmin, he wrote a program to do one simple thing: check the passwords of all computers on a network. He wanted to know if they used the word password as a password, or if they used no password at all. His program ran for a year and found hundreds of wide-open government computers. To this day, he insists he wasn't hacking or attacking the computer systems. He said it was more like going fishing for information.
Fishing, huh? That phrase is a microaggression.
Save it for Twitter. Eventually, Gary found computers inside the U.S. Navy, U.S. Space Command, and NASA. But he didn't find anything interesting until he stumbled across...
Aliens?
Not exactly.
What did he find?
He found a spreadsheet.
Sometimes you are so disappointing.
Gary McKinnon had accessed some of the most highly classified files in the U.S. government. Most of what he found was pretty boring. Lots of staff reports, department memos, mostly just bureaucratic paperwork. But Gary found a spreadsheet on a U.S. Navy server that caught his eye. It was called Non-Terrestrial Officers and contained a list of names. He was looking at a list of people stationed somewhere other than planet Earth.
Non-terrestrial officers could be humans serving on another planet or non-humans serving on this planet.
Well, that's true, but in this case, Gary was pretty sure that these were humans because the list showed officer transfers from one ship to another. So Gary looked for the ships in the U.S. Naval Registry.
Well, let me guess. The ships weren't on the list.
They were not.
Ooh.
They appeared to belong to a secret fleet, a fleet operating in space. But that wasn't even the most interesting thing that he found. A spreadsheet is just words. But you know what's worth 1,000 of those?
A picture?
A picture. Gary McKinnon had heard the testimony of a woman named Donna Hare. She was a former NASA employee who worked at the agency for years. She said she saw quite a few UFOs in NASA satellite photos. But the photos, both physical and digital, were always altered to remove the UFOs from the images.
Oh, you don't say.
In the 1980s, Donna was working for NASA at Johnson Space Center. Specifically, she worked in the highly secure area known as Building Number 8. One day, Donna stopped by a coworker's office about something completely different. When she walked in, this coworker had a satellite image on his computer screen. He showed her a white cigar-shaped object. He asked her what she thought it could be. She said it might be a blob on the emulsion or a scanning defect. But then he pointed to something that made Donna have to catch her breath. The object was casting a shadow on the ground. So whatever it was real. Gary was intrigued by the story and thought Donna Hare was telling the truth. Since he already had access to NASA's computers, he wrote a program to search for the image. He narrowed his list of hundreds of computers down to just a few, inside Building Number 8. Naturally, they had blank passwords, so he logged into them one by one. Most of these machines had empty desktops, but one computer had folders named raw, filtered, processed, and unprocessed. This was exactly how Donna described the computer in Building Number 8, so this was the one. The folder labeled unprocessed contained an image, but the file was huge so Gary couldn't download it, so he tried to view it on the remote desktop. So Gary McKinnon clicked the file and watched as the image appeared, pixel by pixel, line by line. At first, he saw nothing but blank space, but then the hemisphere of the planet began to form, and then he saw clouds. And then, about 2/3 of the way down, he saw what he was looking for: a spaceship. Gary saw a large silver cylinder, completely smooth, no rivets or seams of any kind. But a few seconds after opening the file, Gary noticed the mouse on the remote computer moved, but he wasn't moving it.
Uh-oh, the jig is up.
Whoever was sitting at the computer in building number 8 turned off their network connection, and Gary was disconnected.
Oh no, did he get a screenshot?
Nope, no time. So the good news for Gary McKinnon was his suspicions were proved correct. The bad news? The US government was onto him.
Is this a UFO? And he's smiling at me and he says, I can't tell you that. What I knew he meant was, it was, but he couldn't tell me. So I said, what are you going to do with this information? And he said, well, we always have to airbrush them out before we sell them to the public. And I was just amazed that they had a protocol in place for getting rid of UFO pictures.
Gary McKinnon stumbled onto more evidence of what he saw in the file of non-terrestrial officers, evidence of a secret space program within the US military. And this secret space program isn't new. There are clues about it going back over 50 years. In the 1960s, the US Air Force had a program that ran in parallel with NASA's Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo programs. It was called the Manned Orbiting Laboratory, or MOL. The MOL program had its own facilities and its own staff. They had uniforms and spacesuits, but they were completely different from NASA's, so there'd be no confusion that the MOL employees worked for a completely different program. The operation was so secret that not even the wives knew what their husbands were working on.
The wives don't need to know nothing. What happens in orbit stays in orbit.
You've been divorced how many times?
3.
Uh-huh.
Cheap shot.
The MOL program was created to develop a spy station in space, but it was canceled by President Richard Nixon in 1969.
Or was it?
Right. But what Gary McKinnon stumbled onto was something far bigger than some Cold War spy program. After Gary found the cigar-shaped UFO on the NASA computer and got caught, US officials began to pressure the UK to help track him down. In early 2002, Gary was arrested and charged with 97 counts of causing damage to US intelligence assets, and he was accused of doing $800,000 worth of damage. The US government claimed he hacked into dozens of military computers and 16 NASA computers. They claimed he altered and deleted files, and that his activities were, in the US government's words, intentional and calculated to influence and affect the US government by intimidation and coercion. These charges were very aggressive. Clearly, the US government was concerned about what Gary found, so they wanted to make an example of him and make sure no one else would ever try to access a single document mentioning UFOs. Gary McKinnon spent 10 years defending himself against these charges and trying to stay in the UK. If he were charged in the United States, he'd be facing up to 70 years in federal prison. The media picked up the story but downplayed the UFO connection. McKinnon was described as a hacker trying to harm the Pentagon. The only major publication to mention the UFO side of the story was the UK Daily Mail. Gary said this publicity is one of the things that saved him. Eventually, his case landed on the desk of UK Home Secretary Theresa May, who would eventually go on to be Prime Minister. She ruled that McKinnon could not be taken back to the US because he suffered from Asperger's. Now, Gary McKinnon did break the law, there's no disputing that. But he also did the US a favor. Using the hacker name Solo, he sent messages to US agencies telling them their security was weak. He felt he was morally justified.
I thought if this technology really does exist, it should be used for the good of all of us, free energy, or at least very cheap. If this is being kept secret, why? Because obviously that would be used against people if it's being kept secret, rather than furthering humanity. But at the time, there was a very popular phrase bandied about called heating or eating. Old age pensioners had to choose whether to pay for their heating or pay to have food and then sit on their chair with a blanket and eat their food.
Gary McKinnon's case finally ended in 2012, and he became a celebrity in the UFO community. He'd exposed, or at least said he'd exposed, government knowledge of an alien presence. But his case proved there was something much more sinister going on. This wasn't something as simple as the US government covering up UFOs. This was proof that there was a highly organized secret space program in place. This program has a staff of thousands. It has a fleet of spaceships. It has weapons more advanced than anything currently in use. And this program has a name: Solar Warden.
Another incident, I knew someone in quarantine with the Apollo astronauts. He told me that the Apollo astronauts saw craft on the moon when we landed. The astronauts are told to keep this quiet. They're not allowed to talk about it.
At the same time Gary McKinnon was snooping NASA's servers, rumors were going around about a secret space program named Solar Warden. Solar Warden came out of the program called the Strategic Defense Initiative. Now, this was a Reagan-era defense program nicknamed Star Wars by the media. Now, this program has multiple space platforms, similar to aircraft carriers. Its mission is to scan the solar system for unauthorized alien intrusions and report those intrusions to the U.S. Space Force. According to the rumors, the U.S. and other nations have treaties that say only a small number of alien visitors are allowed on Earth at a time, but the aliens had been breaking the treaties for decades.
Octorans. Everybody knows those damn Octorans can't be trusted.
That sounds kind of racist.
Save it for Twitter.
Touché. As the story goes, Reagan was briefed on the aliens by military and civilian leaders. He immediately became determined to protect the Earth from the alien presence. Now, how do we know this? Reagan said so himself. In 2007, HarperCollins published the Reagan Diaries. This book is an insight into the president's daily life in the White House. His entries aren't written like a memoir. They're just thoughts that Reagan jotted down throughout the day. And on page 334, dated June 11, 1985, the president made the following entry.
Lunch with 5 top space scientists. It was fascinating. Space truly is the last frontier, and some of the developments therein are like science fiction, except they are real. I learned that our shuttle capacity is such that we could orbit 300 people.
Whoa, did Gipper let a big one slip, eh?
He sure did. Now, if you know the space program, this entry makes no sense. The maximum capacity of a NASA space shuttle is 8 people. At the time, the entire fleet was only 4 shuttles. Even if all the shuttles were used at the same time, which they never were, that's only 32 people. So what's Reagan talking about? Later, people suggested Reagan might not have been talking about space shuttles at all. Maybe he was referencing a program that was supposedly canceled in 1979. A program to develop a space plane called Starraker.
Ooh, like the James Bond movie.
No, that was Moonraker.
Oh, right. Hey, you know that girl at the end of the movie had braces?
Yep, I thought so too, but she didn't. That's a Mandela effect.
I can't get my brain to accept it.
I can't either. Anyway, the Starraker, unlike the shuttle, could carry a lot of people. It was bigger than a 747. It could carry a payload of 200,000 pounds, more than enough to put 300 people on a space platform. So it's possible that Reagan was right, and Solar Warden is real, at least technically. The first reference to a secret space program with the name Solar Warden is from early 2006. An anonymous post appeared on a bulletin board called the Open Minds Forum.
We have a space fleet, which is codenamed Solar Warden. There were, as of 2005, 8 ships, equivalent to aircraft carriers, and 43 protectors, which are space planes. One was lost recently to an accident in Mars orbit while it was attempting to resupply the multinational colony within Mars. This base was established in 1964 by American and Soviet teamwork. Not everything is as it seems. We have visited all the planets in our solar system, at a distance of course, except Mercury. We've landed on Pluto and a few moons. These ships contain personnel from many countries and have sworn an oath to the world government. The technology came from back engineering alien disk wreckage and at times with alien assistance.
For a few years, Solar Warden flew mostly under the radar in UFO circles. But in 2012, Solar Warden was back. In November of that year, a Huffington Post article by reporter Darren Perks was the first major news article about Solar Warden. It was also the first to tie in the story of Gary McKinnon. The article claimed that the program began in 1980 and operates under the U.S. Naval Network and Space Operations Command, the NNSOC. The space fleet has 8 massive carriers, each over 600 feet long. Each carrier is staffed by 300 people and protected by about 40 scout ships, and these ships are used to intercept alien intruders. According to the report, there are permanent multinational bases on the moon and Mars that are supplied by the carriers.
So that's why we never went back to the moon.
Right, at least not publicly. Darren Perks personally investigated the Solar Warden story, and in 2010 he was contacted by a whistleblower in the U.S. Department of Defense. This contact confirmed that Solar Warden is real.
While conducting a FOIA Freedom of Information request with the DoD, Department of Defense, in 2010, I had a much unexpected response by email from them which read, "About an hour ago, I spoke to a NASA rep who confirmed this was their program and it was terminated by then President Obama. He also informed me that it was not a joint program with the DoD. The NASA rep informed me that you should be directed to the Johnson Space Center FOIA manager.
So assuming Perks wasn't lying, the email response clearly indicated Solar Warden existed, or something like it did, but was canceled by President Obama in the early 2000s. Perks never followed up on his original article, and as you might expect, neither NASA nor the DoD has ever mentioned it. So if all we have are reports from anonymous people, that's not much proof of Solar Warden. But in 2007, we'd get more evidence, and this time, they're pictures. In 2007, a British amateur astronomer named John Leonard Walson started using a new technique to film the night sky. By attaching special equipment to his telescope, he records objects in visible, infrared, and ultraviolet spectrums. He then takes the clearest frame from each band and combines them. This process is called luminance layering. Walson first used the technique to view the Space Shuttle and the International Space Station, and experts confirmed that his technique works. But things got really weird when he started recording videos of stars in the sky. Walson discovered that many of the stars are not stars at all. They're in fact massive, highly reflective space platforms, exactly the type that Solar Warden uses. Some platforms have solar panels, others have what looks like weapons attached to the structures. He said some of the objects look like spaceships from Star Trek that might be used by the Federation or Klingons.
Oh, what do toilet paper and Captain Kirk have in common?
Please don't.
They both fly past Uranus and wipe out the Klingons.
Walson seemed to be confirming the presence of a vast fleet in the space above us, exactly as Solar Warden believers claimed.
Oh, the government probably hates this guy, huh?
They sure do. Not long after releasing his images, the infamous black helicopters appeared, flying very close to his house. Walson said that he was even being intimidated by what he called a government goon, and they even got physical at one point. But there's more to Solar Warden than just questionable videos taken with a telescope. In the mid-1980s, rumors emerged of a secret government project, codename Aurora. Aurora is a triangle-shaped space plane. The program was even covered in aviation magazines. Now, there weren't many UFO sightings described as triangles before the 80s, but now this is a common type of UFO. Also during this time, the British Ministry of Defense opened up a highly classified office dedicated to quietly investigating UFOs. One of its employees was Nick Pope. Nick said on the wall of the main office was a large photograph of an object known as the Calvine UFO, which was taken near Calvine, England on August 4th, 1990. The original photo has disappeared, but it depicted an 80-foot-long wedge or diamond-shaped object in the sky being chased away by a Harrier jet. This happened in front of civilian witnesses who took the picture. Using the recollections of people who had seen the actual photos, computer artists later recreated the image, and that was the last anyone heard about the UFO photo. But in 2022, a former British intelligence officer named Craig Lindsay released a scan of what he claimed was the authentic, original Calvine UFO photo. It showed the diamond-shaped object, the Harrier jet, and the fence in the foreground almost exactly matching the artist's rendering of the scene. Lindsay's photo was confirmed by experts to be authentic.
So it was real?
Well, no. Well, maybe. Probably not. The photo paper was authentic and typical for the 90s, but the originals are supposed to be color photos. Lindsay's is black and white. Also, the exact location of the original Calvine UFO photo was found, and the background didn't match. There should be hills and fields and trees in the background, and there just aren't. Now, supporters say you can't see the background in the photos because it's too foggy, but weather reports say the day the photo was taken was perfectly clear. So whatever Lindsay's photo is, it's probably not one of the originals. But the original photograph was taken by two civilian hikers, and for some strange reason, their identities are classified until the year 2076. And the photos do match the craft developed by the Aurora Project. And there are plenty of witnesses who say that's exactly what the Calvine UFO really is. So unless the original photos are found or we can speak to the hikers, we may never know what the object really was. Now, skeptics of Solar Warden say it's too difficult to keep such a large program secret, that people who were part of the program would talk. And they're right, people would talk. In fact, they did.
The Air Force official response to any reports of that nature is that we have no such program.
But there's a growing body of evidence that seems to indicate otherwise.
A hypersonic aircraft with a speed of around 4,000 miles per hour. if you look at it from underneath, what you see is a perfect triangle, really quite unlike anything else has ever been flown.
And according to Bill Sweetman, there's the Air Force's secret test base in southern Nevada called Groom Lake.
There is something going on a very large scale, and simply denying that anything like Aurora exists leaves wide open the question of what's going on there.
Still, the Air Force says it knows nothing.
Shortly after the Solar Warden story emerged, several witnesses came forward, each claiming to have been a part of the secret space program. One of these was Laura Eisenhower, great-granddaughter of President Dwight Eisenhower. She said that at an early age, she'd been kidnapped and sent to other planets. She claimed she was involved in a war with an alien species called the Archons. Andrew Basiago was another whistleblower. He said he was recognized at an early age as an ideal fit for a secret space program. He claimed that he used a teleporter, not a spaceship, to travel to Mars on many occasions. And while on Mars, he engaged in armed conflict with alien species. And by 2015, other whistleblowers confirmed their involvement, not just in a vague secret space program, but specifically in a program called Solar Warden. Corey Good said he was removed from his old life in the 1980s, then reverse-aged 20 years and recruited into a secret military program.
Ugh, I'd like to reverse age 20 years.
You and me both, pal. Now, Corey Good described a friendly race of blue avians that were part of a super federation of aliens. The Federation is trying to help the human race fight off alien invaders, including a reptilian race.
Lizard people? From outer space?
Yep.
So most of these unwanted entrances into our solar system would be more small groups of ETs or single craft that are trying to be sneaky.
Right.
Just trying to slip in.
Marauder groups that would come in and do hit and runs to come in and take things and leave.
Hey, lizard people are crafty. So very, very crafty.
Good said some people part of the secret space program are trying to push full disclosure, trying to force the alien presence into the open by doing flybys of the International Space Station and popping up on photos and videos. But disclosure still hasn't happened, and Solar Warden is virtually unknown to most of the population. So either there's no such thing as Solar Warden or a secret space program, or it is true, and our solar system is a far more dangerous place than any of us could have possibly imagined. Solar Warden and the secret space program is a major branch of ufology, and because of social media, it's becoming more mainstream. Solar Warden is covered everywhere from YouTube to TikTok to the occasional mainstream news story. But is it true? No. Well, maybe. Some of it. Gary McKinnon is certainly a real person, but he says he doesn't know anything about Solar Warden or how he got associated with it. He never saw that name on any document or image that he accessed. It seems that the article by Darren Perks in 2012 is what connected Gary to the Solar Warden mythology. And it's easy to understand the connection. The picture of the ship McKinnon saw sounds a lot like the carrier platforms in Solar Warden stories. But even if Gary McKinnon saw a picture of a UFO, and I believe he did, it's a leap to go from one photo to a huge secret space program conspiracy. Now, other aspects of the story, the carriers, the fighters, the large crews, and the guarding of the solar system, these sound like the plots of well-known science fiction books and TV shows. For example, a spaceship, moon bases, and fighters that monitor the solar system come straight from a 1970 British TV show called UFO.
Ooh, is that the groovy one with the moon girls in short skirts and silver cat suits and the purple wigs?
That's the one.
Did I mention the short skirts?
You did.
He's a great show. He's really, he's such a good, I always liked the way he's a good, Tanya.
Okay, snap out of it.
Sorry.
The show also featured SID, the Space Intruder Detector. Its job was to scan near-Earth space for alien intruders, just like Solar Warden. And some of the eyewitnesses, like Corey Good, have been exposed as frauds. He was forced to testify under oath that he made the whole thing up, especially the part about the blue avians helping to protect the Earth.
Well, maybe he made that part up, but lizard people are definitely real.
Eyewitnesses like Laura Eisenhower and Andrew Basiago may be telling the truth, but their stories are a hodgepodge of every science fiction trope you can think of. Time travel, teleportation, zero-point energy, and the list goes on. Now, I'm not saying they're lying, but I am saying they both tell very convoluted stories. The only aspect of Solar Warden that holds up to any scrutiny is Gary McKinnon's personal testimony. But unfortunately, that's all we have, his word. Now think of the logistics involved in something like Solar Warden. In order for it to work, every nation on Earth would have to be involved. Russia, China, the US, and really every industrialized country on Earth is aware when any other country launches a rocket of any kind. You couldn't put a fleet's worth of equipment into space without somebody noticing. You'd also have to constantly be sending food and water and air into space to resupply the fleet.
Oh, they raise their own livestock in space, and they grow vegetables with hydroponics.
What do you know about hydroponics?
Let's just say in college, I was very, industrious.
Ah. So if Solar Warden does exist, that would mean every nation on Earth has set aside their differences and come together for a common goal. That's actually a nice thought. Unfortunately, that common goal is protecting the human race from destruction by an alien invasion. Now that's terrifying. So I don't know if Solar Warden is real. But when I think about its purpose, I really hope it isn't. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. My name is AJ. That's Hecklefish.
Greetings, Earthling.
This has been the Y-Files. And if you had fun or learned anything, do him a favor and like, subscribe, comment, and share. That stuff really makes Hecklefish happy. Now, like most topics we cover on the channel, today's was recommended by you. And if there's a story you'd like to see or learn more about, go to theyfiles.com/tips. And special thanks to our patrons who make this channel possible, especially when we get demonetized for no reason like last week. If you'd like to be part of a great community, check out the Y-Files on Discord. It's a lot of fun and free to join. But if you'd like to support the channel, consider becoming a member on Patreon or grab something from the Y-Files store.
All of the coffee mugs are completely 100% fistable.
That's true. Until next time, be safe, be kind, and know that you are appreciated.
So, that was a bit of a long one, but it's an interesting story though, and I find it absolutely hilarious how in the end he just rejects the entire thing without any reason. Some part of it is probably true, other parts are probably false. Who am I to say? I just connect the dots and gather my thoughts and come up with my own opinion. Now, what the guy in the video neglects to mention is one important fact. The fact that the US went after him so hard tells us all we really need to know. This was not about security. This was about the disclosure of the program, and that makes it very real to me. And the fact is that Ronald Reagan did oversee the program called the Solar Warden. And most of the testimonials I have seen and read refer back to this program. And another one called Radiant Guardian. Both these fleets exist for the same purpose. Apparently, to defend and to monitor our immediate surroundings, oversee and defend trade routes and interact with other civilizations and manage diplomatic missions. Now, these people are all about space, planets and galaxies. They do not subscribe to my large Earth theory. We are unfortunately still a very small fringe minority when it comes to these things. But I could very well see such an operation to work on our larger realm as well. It does not exclude that Solar Warden travels through domes to other worlds. At least, that's my opinion and mine alone. We simply don't know. And I can never say anything for certain, as I do not have access to any of this information. First hand, anyway. I really wish I did. So you would ask, but why would the US military trick these poor soldiers and put them through 20 years of service without their knowledge? That makes no sense. As far as I've gathered, the Antarctic Nazis that we spoke about before, when they made the deal with the Americans after the war, probably in the late 50s, they promised to provide this new technology to the US military. But one thing they needed in return, the Nazis that is, was manpower. This German breakaway civilization needed soldiers, many of them, in the hundreds of thousands. Contracts were made, and the US and other nations provided the manpower needed for many years to come. And as far as I know, it could still be occurring today. By doing it in this manner, they did not sacrifice a citizen. They just stole his or her time. It's like it never happened. I know it sounds absolutely incredible, but this is what they all say. The Germans supposedly managed to build an incredible fleet, similar to Star Wars, as discussed before, and started venturing out to other worlds already in the 60s, way before the Americans even took off from the ground. They supposedly established a base on the moon and also one on Mars, and they've been there ever since. Now they have their own planet somewhere. It's said that it looks very similar to Bavaria in Germany in the 1940s. These Germans are quite sentimental, and they brought their entire culture with them, apparently. It's said that they're not present at all on this planet anymore, and the Antarctica base has been taken over by the Americans for their own space force. So when I find little images like this, I get really curious, because it kind of speaks to what I'm talking about. That's a really interesting cloud we see there. Could that be the cloaking that they all talk about? Who knows? I have no idea. Now, when Trump established the Space Force in 2020, he did not create anything new, in my view. He simply took over the existing technology that had been around in deep black projects for a long, long time. Space Force has an important role for what is to come when I describe World War IV in the coming chapters. I find it absolutely hilarious, though, that the Space Force logo is identical to the one in Star Trek. So they are really a bunch of space nerds, don't you think? Just look at this image on your screen and you tell me if that's not the Star Trek logo. These people have a sense of humor. Now, the Starfleet is said to be in the hundreds of vessels at this point, much like the Navy is organized. The Space Fleet is very much the same, with a mothership, which would be the carrier, escorted by smaller ships of all kinds. The carriers are the most interesting part. They appear, or so they say, to be cylindrical in shapes, but in sections that can be swapped out depending on the type of mission they perform. The carrier itself is said to be over a mile long. It's a massive, massive ship. This is what they supposedly would look like. This is obviously a rendering, not a real picture, but it kind of explains the idea. Is it built on Earth? Maybe. There are large areas of land that are inhabited where such operations could be performed. And if cloaking technology is real, they could hover about my house right now and I wouldn't even know they're there. So yes, they could get away with that for sure. They would supposedly look like the ones in this picture. Several whistleblowers actually confirmed this. So it might be true after all. What do I know? So now, what else do we know that fits this story? And this is where it gets really interesting, because I have the receipts. We know that there have been many sightings of a specific craft called TR-3B in the last couple of decades. Now, this craft appears to be the workhorse of the fleet. It's a triangular craft with an anti-gravity capacity and zero-point energy propulsion. Now, sightings of this craft worldwide is in the thousands. I wish I could have seen one. I just saw a bloody orb. That's all I got. Now, they are literally everywhere at this point. I will now show you here the patent for such a craft. So we know for a fact that it exists and is a working technology. Many of you might not know that a patent cannot be issued unless concept is proven with an actual working prototype. So if this craft is patented, means by default that it is a working technology. How about that? This is receipt. 100%. There can be no doubt that this is indeed a working technology. And I still drive a car with gasoline, by the way. It would probably look something like this, which is a pretty cool rendering. We also have pictures like this, where you see one sitting on an aircraft carrier. Could that be real? I don't know. Who knows? But it's fascinating nonetheless. Here we have one that appears to have been fished up. One of the early versions that were fished up from the sea after an unsuccessful flight. Is this a real picture? I do not know, but it looks very mysterious to me, doesn't it? Now, one very interesting bit of information that might stimulate you and makes the story stick is that is the dimensions of the craft. That just happens to match exactly to the size and shape of the new B-2 bomber made by Northrop Grumman. They are of exactly the same size and shape. Now, a couple of years ago, something actually quite remarkable happened. A man by the name of Salvatore Pais, that you see on the screen here, he released a patent for a flying anti-gravity craft and a zero-point energy device. This is an open patent, meaning that there are no royalties to be paid to the inventor, and anybody can use this technology. If they can manufacture it, that is. This is the first time ever a technology like this has been made available outside the military circles. The ironic thing is that Salvatore Pais in Spanish means savior of the nation. So that's an interesting coincidence. Here I will show you the actual patents. You can verify them online just as easily as I did. And here it says Salvatore Cesar Pais, United States of America, as represented by the Secretary of the Navy. So this is a military operation. Now if you look here, you will see the middle picture is a craft using an inertial mass reduction device. Okay, let me read out for you what it says. It says, a craft using an inertial mass reduction device comprises of an inner resonant cavity wall, an outer resonant cavity, and microwave emitters. When we speak of resonant cavity wall, or resonant cavity overall, we go back to the bumblebees again. They fly because of a cavity and resonance. So this is basically nature being used in technology. And that makes it very real to me. I don't know about you, but for me this is very, very interesting. Now, the picture of that craft that I just showed you looks very much like a TR-3B, don't you think? I don't know the full story about this issue, but I find this very, very fascinating. It's all interesting and fun, but what does it mean for us? Well, we must consider who was in charge of all this and who kept it all hidden from us for so long. The Khazarian Mafia, once again. They're behind all of it. They are basically at this point a breakaway civilization. They can come and go as they please. They can trade with other races in God knows what kind of commodities. Humans, for sure. Weapons, gold, who knows? Here's what makes this whole issue very concerning. They have kept this issue from the public as a control tool, as fantastical as it may be. For starters, they can never disclose the fact that energy is free. They have trillions invested in oil and gas, and they want to charge us for that, obviously. Banks are needed to finance the entire scam. They cannot disclose the nature of our realm because of what I already mentioned before. We must be convinced that we cannot leave our realm, and they must want us to feel scared and insignificant in order for them to control us more easily. The real ace in the slave, however, is the ultimate scare tactic. The fake alien invasion. Fake, you say? Absolutely. Consider this. We have been brainwashed by Hollywood with all these alien movies, Independence Day kind of propaganda, evil aliens coming to conquer and destroy us all. Is there ever a good alien movie since Spielberg's E.T. in the 80s? Who is another J, by the way. I don't think so. We've been subconsciously conditioned through all this propaganda for decades to prepare for what will be their last stand to obtain total world control and a one-world government. A new world order as the Khazaria mafia puppets like to call it. How many times have we heard that? Let me guide you back in time to the speech of Ronald Reagan at the UN in 1987. Listen to what he had to say.
Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Now, what does that sound like to you? Coming together under one universal threat? There is a plan that has been disclosed by whistleblowers. It's called Project Bluebeam. What this plan details are a de facto invasion by man-made craft accompanied with holographic images projected in the sky. Most of us poor souls would have absolutely no idea that these were craft made on Earth, as we've never seen anything like it before. It will look absolutely alien to 99% of the population. The attack will be real, things will blow up, but it will all be a show, a production, so to speak. Imagine our corrupt world leaders coming together during this time with the entire world population demanding that they do something. Problem, reaction, solution. Remember that? Works like a charm. Next thing you know, we have martial law, digital ID, forced medications and labor camps for the deplorables, like me. A one world government to face the attackers, and they will probably win the battle. Just like in the movies, and will be celebrated as heroes. And it will all be a lie. Now listen to the assistant of Wernher von Braun speaking to you here. This is a big, big admission. I will play this for you now.
The strategy that Wernher von Braun taught me was that first the Russians are going to be considered to be the enemy. In fact, when I met him in '74, they were the enemy, the identified enemy. We were told that they had killer satellites. We were told that they were coming to get us and control us, the dirty commies, that whole story. First, the Russians were the enemy against whom we're going to build space-based weapons. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. We heard a lot about terrorism. Then we were going to identify third world country crazies. We now call them nations of concern. But he said that would be the third enemy against whom we would be needing to build space-based weapons. And the next enemy was asteroids. Now at this point, he kind of chuckled the first time he said it. Asteroids, against asteroids we're going to build space-based weapons. So it was funny then. And the funniest one of all was against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie. He didn't mention a timeline, but he said that it was going to be speeding up faster than anybody could possibly imagine. That the effort to put weapons in space was not only based on a lie, but would accelerate past the point of people even understanding it until it was already up there and too late.
So, folks, this was Wernher von Braun's deathbed confession. There will be a fake alien invasion. So, how would they do that, and how would we fall for it? Happy you asked. Look in these two clips here. What can be done with holograms today? You would not be able to distinguish them from reality. Could they project a spaceship this way? You bet. Look at this little clip. So these are holograms from Dubai, actually, and they have sound as well. So, I mean, this would certainly fool me if they would project a massive spaceship on top of my city. I think it would fool you as well. So it just so happens that during the editing of this particular chapter that I was writing, when I wrote this, it was the 10th of December 2024, we witnessed an enormous amount of sightings around the world of exactly what I have described here. Project Bluebeam has indeed been activated, and the world is slowly experiencing a fake alien invasion in real time, or so it appears. It is an interesting time to be alive, that's for sure. So use your logic and discernment. And you know how to spot the hologram? You use a simple laser pointer. The laser goes right through. So if you know, you know. And if you don't, you don't. So I know there's a lot of craziness there, but this is what I have found, and I reached my own conclusions. You will certainly reach yours, and I will not judge you in any way, shape, or form. We move on to the next chapter, called 11.3, where we discuss real extraterrestrial craft and who made them. So here we will distinguish the difference between man-made and actual outer-worldly craft. So that's another interesting story for you. That's all for me today. Max is out, and peace to you all.